Stars of our show here are CEOs and founders or co-founders. Some really cool hardware, hard tech companies that are kind of shaking up the world in batteries and manufacturing. First we have James Wagner. He's the CEO and co-founder of Joule. They make stackable, scalable batteries that can scale anywhere from the needs of, say, an RV all the way up to a music festival. And your entrepreneurial career in batteries since like way back in 2007, that was kind of like the nascent era of like EVs and stuff like that. Things were just coming around, so you go back
to cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next we have Gabe, and he's the CEO and co-founder. Co-founder, or are you the main founder? Just founder. Okay, yeah. Slant 3D. They do mass manufacturing 3D printing, and are one of the largest 3D printers in the 3D print farms in the world. When I first looked up your description, you were the largest in the Western Hemisphere. Is that still true, or is that?
Yeah, we're getting some steep competition.
Okay, yeah, cool. And kind of the significant numbers for these guys, they can print up to 100,000 plastic parts for cheaper than injection molding. And I'll have Gabe explain kind of what that actually means in the real world. And before we get started, I kind of have some questions for the audience to kind of gauge what questions I should ask you guys. Are any of you guys actively looking at starting your own hardware or manufacturing related startup, or kind of in the middle of it? Yep, back there, okay, cool. So that actually might be good. And then how many of you here are here because you're just curious? Cool. And how many of you have a heartbeat and are excited to see these guys talk? Who knew a heartbeat could be so exciting, right? Okay, well let's get going with the questions here. So both of your companies have developed products or services, hardware that kind of both replace legacy systems as well as enable new products and stuff like that to be developed kind of on your platform, if that makes sense. Can you explain first what kind of legacy systems you are replacing, why your product is better, and then what kinds of applications are being used that your technology and stuff like that is enabling. So let's start with James, right?
Yeah, so my battery experience or excitement goes way back, and had a previous battery startup called R2EV in 2006 to 2010. It would be modular battery blades that you'd have 10 for your Honda Civic, you'd have 15 for your Suburban, whatever that might be, and kind of alleviate this whole range anxiety. So, imagine back then, everyone thought the magic bullet was going to be hydrogen, right? We now have a problem with fossil fuels and hydrogen can solve it. Obviously, it didn't happen. Obviously, batteries are the way to go in many different ways. Of course, I'm a little biased, but you can kind of see that happening. And that idea of something that is flexible and dynamic and accessible as a power system, and the idea that the future of the energy is going to be batteries and no longer fossil fuels, is what kind of has led this journey for my co-founder and I since 2006, when we were both at University of Idaho at the time, and young and naive and exciting to where we are now. And then so Joule was founded in 2015, so way back when, before even lithium ion was a thing. This is really still lead acid. Solving for all of your energy needs was the big broad idea. Understanding that there's going to be a future where fossil fuel burning is going to be no longer acceptable. What do we do? And in that nature, we started building, and it started off small, and now really where we are is we are replacing large portable diesel generators for businesses, enterprises, whatever that, not necessarily a consumer event. Now all our product is designed to be consumer accessible, and we have plenty of retail customers. The the nature of where our customers have taken us and where we see the opportunity has been the bigger stuff, because our platform extends that large. So really, you'll be surprised how many different things require diesel generators. And you can think of, hospitals have diesel generators, grocery stores have diesel generators. Anytime that there's an event, a farmer's market, there's going to be dozens of generators, whatever that might be. This is where Joule case can come in at a price point that's competitive to a diesel generator, replace that with something that is quiet, doesn't emit, it's safer.
Cool. Gabe?
So when we got started, the fundamental operating goal was, could we do injection molding without the molds? Because if you're manufacturing a product, you have to spend $10,000 to $100,000, and then you get your first part and realize that everything was wrong, nobody wants your product, and that something was designed incorrectly. But you just set your whole product in stone, literally. So we wanted to try to fix that initially, and we did it we were forced into it because at a previous company we had designed a series of products that we had made to be 3D printed, but they had to be scaled up, and we didn't want to go to molds, and we had designed so completely for printing that they were unmoldable. So we had to build print farms to produce those products, at which point we saw, okay, 3D printing really sucks right now at that point, but there was a clear engineering path to make it scalable. We were like, okay, if we do this, then we can get to 10,000. If we do that, we can get to 100,000 parts and make parts for the same or less cost than injection molding, just because we get rid of that giant hump right up front of buying the mold. And it made sense to us because fundamentally, if you're looking at manufacturing, you have the raw materials and the energy used to turn those raw materials into something useful. So if that is the fundamental thing you're trying to get to, that's the perfect process, which is what 3D printing is. You put in electricity and you put in plastic and a part appears. Whereas with molding, or any traditional manufacturing, you have the material, you have the energy, and then you have either waste chips from carving something out, or you have the mold sitting off on the side. So there's just obvious waste in how manufacturing was done. Anymore, since we passed being more affordable than molding at 100,000 probably about 2 years ago. Since then, we've been trying to invert that and bring it back down to see how we can make one single, completely original part for the cost of just that part. So if historically you can make that part for $1 if you made 10 million of them, we want to be able to make that part for $1 with just that one part. So that anyone, anywhere can just upload a product or a design and have it printed out when some gal in New York decides she wants to buy a design from some kid in Africa. And we would print and ship it for them. So now not only do we want to get rid of the molds, but we want to get rid of the ships moving all the parts across the ocean, and we want to get rid of the warehouses storing all the stuff for 10 years while you figure out how to sell all that inventory. So ideally that all boils down to just a manufacturing back end, or we like to say a warehouse where the shelves make the product, which just changes how all of the product creation and manufacturing process works.
Cool. So kind of a second half of that question, for Joule case, like I've seen a couple of examples of where there's companies that are starting to integrate your batteries perhaps into their own products, and kind of similar, obviously other companies are printing on your. So what are the applications that you guys are starting to see that you're kind of enabling that maybe you didn't foresee, especially if there's any surprises that have come along, that'd be kind of interesting to hear any stories on that.
Yeah, so we started in 2019, really started to focus on events. The 2020, right, everything changed, and suddenly we had to pivot and figure out how we're going to sell, and we found direct sales to businesses, and it's food trucks, it's a large video wall manufacturer, whatever it might be for large portable power, right, and so now we have events around that we're powering, and we have powered Tree Fort a couple times now, for example, right? Or Pride Fest in Boise, or the summertime concert series, or Goat Head Fest, right? All of these different things, showcases they're powering them. You have direct sales to like a food truck. We did a big food truck rally at Hawks Memorial Stadium where there's 16 food trucks without a single diesel generator. Actually, I take that back. There's one that he came late, and we had to put him in the back corner because he's not prepared to use that. other than that, right, so that's exciting. Direct sales are exciting, but now we're also starting to see EV charging come up. And as we start to, I believe that we have a very strong critical mass. EVs are the future. Everyone's thinking about this, imagining starting to buy EVs. But what no one's thought about is the infrastructure that's going to be required to support the charging, and that is going to be extremely expensive. The traditional model of hard infrastructure installation and increasing that pipe diameter to service that fast charger, the demand that you can put on Idaho Power in terms of, you're good to go and suddenly here's 3 chargers coming on board and they want that full Tesla in 20 minutes, go. All of this makes it very impractical where when you have battery systems that are portable and modular and flexible as we are, now we're starting to see these events come up. So for example, tomorrow I fly down to Palm Springs and we're meeting with, there's a BMW EV event. They're trying to demonstrate how exciting their BMWs are in a roadshow format. And then so Joule Case is there with our large battery trailer system, and we're going to be charging these BMWs so that they can get back on the racetrack. So super exciting for all of the potential around EVs as well.
Cool. Good. It's something different every week. We've probably some of the biggest ones that we've worked, or most interesting and weird ones that we worked with were that we didn't expect, especially being an Idaho company, were like cannabis industry products and that kind of stuff. So those were ones that were different. But even more recently, as we've kind of grown, it's been fun to work with some of the clients who are adopting new manufacturing. So we're getting more and more into high tech, and we've actually been able to start kind of working with like a fusion company, which is kind of sweet. But as far as like the applications and where it's all going, it's so broad because we can make anything that everything wanders through the door. But it's been neat to see kind of how the accessibility to creating stuff has increased so much over like the last 5 years or so. Literally to where right now we're developing software where you can literally describe a product and an AI will create it for you. So you don't even have to have an engineer do CAD. It's just literally whatever you want, you type it into Amazon and it is created while it's searching for the product, which is kind of nuts in a number of different ways.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. I would say so. I think we've kind of painted your guys' products as roses and rainbows here. But what are kind of the barriers of adoption and kind of for your technologies, for your products, and are those, I guess, which of those barriers are you trying to tackle as kind of for the future trajectory of your companies? Let's start with you.
Yeah, the thing that comes up over and over is the inertia around our fossil fuel energy economy. And you just don't even realize what we've built, where there's a gas station on every corner, the engineering that went into the fact that you can take your $50,000 car, or $10,000, whatever it is, right, in this investment, you pull up to some random corner, you put in a nozzle that magically fits, you pay $500 now for unknown fluid that you don't know, and you drive away, and it's a seamless experience. Like, and that still doesn't even go through your process, but understanding that if you look at when transportation and horseless carriages came around, there were 15 different fuel sources, and if you were to drive down the road and suddenly now everything's diesel and you're driving using propane. So all of the standardization that happened to create this infrastructure, now we're having customers saying like, this is great, we want to do this, and we need you in Okeechobee, Florida for this massive music festival in 3 months, can you do it? And it's like, well, no, because it's not cost, it's too expensive to have everything tracked down there, right? So what we're going to need to do is significantly invest in the ability so that we can compete head to head with the infrastructure that is, the hundreds of diesel generators just in the Boise area, right? And when we have, so for example, the potato drop is asking us all these questions, and it's very easy for the potato drop to call Tate's Rents or Idaho Band Brand or whatever it is and get a generator that week. if they're working with us, it's going to be like, yeah, we need to make sure this is all well planned out, right? And make sure that we have our product available, make sure they understand it, make sure that we're all ready. They're obviously super excited, but there's a lot of momentum that needs to be in there. And so we're looking at ways that we can leverage borrowing and debt to make it so that there is these nodes of Joule case inventory that's right there at the site. Because at the point that we have to take this example in Palm Springs, right? We're freighting our batteries from here to Palm Springs. It's a $5,000 bill. And then we have to compete head to head with a diesel generator that's right there on site, and they don't have that $5,000 bill, right? And then suddenly they're like, oh, well, Joule case is more expensive. And it's, well, if we had a battery system right there, it'd be so much better. So, we just need to get that critical mass of batteries everywhere.
Yeah, okay. Gabe?
Inertia is too soft of a word.
Fair enough.
Both of us are dealing really with kind of industries that are more than 100 years old. Power infrastructure, manufacturing, and injection molding. And entrenched is, it puts way too much evilness into that side. It's just very well defined and very well built out. So the idea that some plucky startup's gonna come in and say, we got a better way, you should all switch tomorrow, is sort of impetuous of us. But it's also indicative of how big and challenging it is to create something like this, because there's a lot of foundational resources and infrastructure in the existing industries that work really, really well outside of the side problems that they don't work, which is why we exist. And the challenges that they create, but we've all learned to live with it. For us, specifically, most of the problems that we run into are in design. So every engineer who graduates, well, a lot of engineers who graduate who work in manufacturing are familiar with machining and injection molding. They're taught that in classes. There are classes that teach that. There are very few classes that teach mass production 3D printing, because the number of people who know anything about it are probably can be counted on my fingers on the planet. People who really know how to use large quantities of machines and produce good quality parts from them. So there's this knowledge gap that we have, which is really tough, because you're basically waiting for people to die and people to be born who will learn, which is a terrible component of the business model. But for us, it's really, okay, how do we make it easier and more accessible so that it's no longer that particular problem of having to wait for the human race to turn over one generation for people to start adopting it, but make it so easily and accessible that we bypass that traditional process. So it goes back to like that AI creation tool, where a normal person can ask for the product that they want, and all the hairy details are taken care of automatically without having to bring in super skilled labor, who's also very expensive and has the cost.
Yeah, and when you say that, Gabe, I think you always hear this in startup land, right? If you're going to have a new product technology, it's going to have to be 10 times better.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be incrementally better because you're not going to win because of the entrenchment or the inertia.
Right.
Cool.
It just sounded to me like you need better PR and marketing and stuff like that. Like your challenges are somewhat different, and the fact that yours is truly a logistics issue, and you need a large amount of money to scale to have that logistics in place. Kind of like the Tesla charging stations, for example, right? If you had your batteries all over, where yours almost seems like a simpler solution, where what you've designed seems like it should be a lot better than what they have established right now, but they don't maybe realize that. And coming from a sales background, a lot of times that just, unfortunately, just really hard work to get out there and hustle and get that press and PR, because it sounds like you do have a better way of going about it.
There's a lot of that, but it is prohibitively expensive to convince a 60-year-old engineer that he's wrong and should change how he does stuff. That's kind of the issue that we run into. But yes, the presentation and the marketing of it works. And so for everybody who's coming up and looking at options, and for like people who are cash strapped and want just a more efficient way, it's a very easy sell over there. But they're small and they're high risk for us as clients.
Got it, so you get your scale.
Yes, it's really tough to go into some established organization and
Like
say
a Boeing or something.
Yeah, and as a founder, I think both of us are very technical and we're passionate about our product, and and we can be excited, but sometimes we know too much to our own detriment, right? And then you can have that like sales conversation with someone, and we want to go into all the nitty-gritty details, and we want them to learn everything that we know. And I've been in batteries for SPO, and this event guy is just like, oh gosh, this is overwhelming, that's scary, I don't want to touch that, right? And then so when you can find someone that can really gloss that over, and as a founder, you're going to have to sell. You're going to have to sell yourself for so long. But it's been for us to have salespeople that are just salespeople, and I don't have to sell anymore. Because as a founder, I'm terrible at it. But you have to do it. I don't want to say that go find a salesperson, everything's magical, because you can't do that. You have to sell it first. But then you can find those salespeople and you can hustle. Because I had the same problem that you're describing in the PR. Because it's the same. All of these event people that are the 60-year-old power guy says, oh well, I just run this generator, and that's it, and I don't have to worry about anything. Now you're saying the batteries. Now I have to think about this. I don't know, that's too much work. I'm tired of this, right? And so every time we do this an event, we create videos and case study. We brand this very well. Where on our website, it's just like, this is cool. This is exciting. Let's stay up here. Let's not get nerdy and detailed, because at that point you've lost the customer.
You have to make sure that it's so phenomenally easy to transition to you that the risk of the transition is eliminated. Because it's not, everybody gets the problem. Okay, yeah, diesel generators are bad, and they get the solution. Batteries are really awesome. But that in between of like, are your batteries going to show up on time tomorrow at the event? Yeah, something like that. That's the thing where you lose the client, and the convincing has to happen. So you have to make sure that there is zero ambiguity about how your solution will perform and the reliability of it.
So the future of hardware manufacturing lies in PR and sales. Slightly different-ish question here. Kind of looking at the last talk that Amber gave, if any of you were in the room for that. Kind of the future of stuff, is heading towards a much more sustainable direction, and at least we're trying to get there, right? Can you speak a little bit to batteries might be slightly more obvious, but I think maybe in more detail, like the sustainability aspect of or maybe what these could kind of enable in that side of things?
Yeah, obviously it's obvious, right?
Yeah.
But I'll give you a couple examples just for you to think about this. All of these generators that Joule Case is focused on do not have the EPA controls, the pollution controls that your car has. So you think about the catalytic converter, all of that, that's not there. So if you were to take tree fort, and just one of those stages that we're running on a diesel generator, and actually there's two diesel generators, one for sound, one for light, and that's just like what they do, which is also super integrated, and they do that, but you talk about entrenchment, right, and everyone just, oh, we have the two generators. That running for a 3-day weekend will emit more CO2 than like my family and our cars driving for a year. 3-day weekends, right? And you don't even realize that. And you think about your personal impact driving your car, and now you start to realize all these diesel generators. So this is something that our whole team is super fired up on, that we see the need, and we're having customers who are starting to raise their hand, and we need to stop these.
From us, it's really just the component of waste. So we got Christmas season coming up. Almost every company that is making toys or widgets or whatever it happens to be is going to end up overproducing somewhere between 15 to 25%. Because the fundamental sin of retail is to run out. So at the end of this year, they're going to landfill, grind up, reprocess all of the plastic toys that didn't get sold this season. So 25% of all of that creation is wasted. So we're a 25% improvement on that because we're able to produce at a rate on demand to where there's basically zero waste. And very high, or at worst, very highly reduced inventories to 3 or 4%. So all of that waste disappears.
And the transportation.
That too. Yeah.
And logistics
Yeah.
is part of that too, yeah.
Yeah.
Because especially
So to
if
be
you
fair,
start
ocean transport
expanding-
is really, really efficient.
Yeah.
even with the dirty stuff.
Sure, for sure. Okay, so let's, oh, sorry,
So
yeah,
what's one of your funnest widget toys, something that you,
sure.
We do a lot of gamer gear right now. So we do headphone stands and stuff that are character heads and that kind of thing. So that when you're done with your Xbox, you set it on top of the God of War mascot or main character or something like that. I shouldn't say mascot, but we gotta be careful about referencing some of that stuff. But But yeah, whenever we have licensing, they're like partners, so it's a lot of fun.
Did you have a question back there?
Yeah, so, it sounds like you've got fairly well down the path of changing people's minds from pragmatic or manufacturing to additive manufacturing. And it makes total sense when you're competing against like injection molding, which is rapid and relatively inexpensive. Do you foresee a path with like metallic 3D printing? Meaning if you set up
The
an
metal
automated,
question.
if you set up an automated weld cell, right, that's an outrageously expensive thing. It's
Mhm.
very expensive to retool, probably more so than injection molding even.
Mhm.
But, you know, everything still has, most things still have a little bit of metal in them.
So our thought on this is the fact that right now there's $600 billion of plastic stuff. So we got a long way to go before we need to add in another industry. And I rail against 3D printing services adding in more processes. Like we are only and exclusively FDM. We don't do resin, we don't do powder, we don't do any of them. Because we want to be good at something rather than having everything. But the metal is also, I'd still consider metal somewhere between 5 and 10 years away from really large scale adoption, just because it is so expensive. So unless you're a rocket company making a nozzle with unlimited budget, where there's very clear engineering benefits to that, I can't get behind where 3D printing has really high value inside of any of the metal applications so far. And to be fair, this is across the board, because very few people know how to make a 3D printing exclusive product. But yeah, plastic is slow and entrenched. Metal is really entrenched, because now you're dealing with a 200-year-old industry of machinists and people who know how to make stuff. And have a really high expectation of perception. We keep an eye on metal and everything else there, because if an application comes up, we do want to address it. But again, something I call a shiny object, in this case literally, but something that can distract us from that core thing that we've got that is fine. We don't need to diversify more, because we've got basically infinite opportunity at this point for quite a while yet before we need to diversify and pursue something.
Yeah, and I think with Gate, like that is perfect, right? You gotta focus and you gotta find like this like niche focus that you can really be great at. And the fact that Gabe has been focused is a great kind of test on, you know, is this like, are you an experienced entrepreneur that's gonna be successful? Because, you know, there's an element of, all right, here's where it goes, but then you're gonna have to pick this and you're gonna have to narrow. And that is always the problem. We were talking about this in the hallway. It's always the challenge of, you know, doing that. And, you know, at Joule case, we had consumer products, and we've had to, you know, I've had to, you know, beat the drum within our team to say, okay, no more consumer products. Like, we've sold this, we're not going to go that route anymore. Like, bottom line is, like, we're over here now. Focus, 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 and win. And your life becomes a lot simpler, and you can actually win. If you're trying to like do this and this and this and this, you're going to boil the ocean and you're going to lose. So it's not a fun story to say, but that means that you're actually doing something.
That being said, when you're starting out, you go where the money is.
Yeah.
And you deal with the cruddy client that you might not want to at other times. So, but yeah, as you are able to, yeah,
Really
find it. Especially if you have kind of like a generic company like we kind of have, you can power anything, we can make anything plastic. So what do?
Yeah.
Run down the phone book and say, do you need power? Do you need plastic stuff? So you have to target it very explicitly.
Question?
Yeah, I was curious what the average lifespan is of the Joule batteries and other competitors, and then if you're investing in any R&D to kind of increase that spec, or if that's like where you're at.
So think of Joule case as kind of like Apple computing. Okay, so and this is a great analogy that I like to use, is that like in 1985, you could build your own PC, right? The keyboard, the screen, everything like that, and then Apple came out with Apple II that made it so that you could access a computer and not be a computer to build your own system. And now, right, we understand where everything that Apple's gone into. But Apple fundamentally is not the Intel AMD processor. They have a, so this is where the analogy kind of breaks down, because they absolutely do have their own processor, but in reality, it's a packaged system, right? Dell or HP or Apple, whatever that might be, it's everything's integrated. Similar to Joule case. We are not a battery chemistry company. We integrate the latest advancements in battery chemistry technologies to integrate into our system. So we're battery agnostic, or chemistry agnostic. So we've started off with silicic acid, gone to NMC lithium ion, and now we're in lithium ion phosphate, whatever that might be. Our technology resides in the fact that it can be packaged and it can output different voltages that match our customers. And we also do some nifty tricks in managing the batteries so that they have as long a life as we can get out of them, but then also work within a broader system as well, that they can work independently or work together. Suddenly there's 10 of them, suddenly there's 500 of them, suddenly there's 2 of them, and all of these battery management systems work together. So that's our technology. We have 9 patents that are granted, another 18 patents that are in the queue, in the hopper. This is all around just the focus of the application, right? The solution that you're driving. So the chemistries that we have are just whatever we can get from our suppliers. Now, we do have some tricks where we manage that discharge so that we're as gentle to that battery as we can be, and so it extends the battery a little bit further. And then so right now we have a 5,000 cycle count on our batteries before you're going to have a 20% degradation, right? So after 5,000 times of fully charged and fully discharged, you're going to finally notice that this battery is just a little bit not as good. That's what that all means. What's also important for us is that, as we build out this future of the energy economy, that we do it better and that there's a full circular ecosystem here. So what happens when that battery reaches end of life? And there are 2 ways that we can dispose of these batteries. Now granted, none of our batteries actually reach end of life still, right? So that's good. But when they do, there are marketplaces being developed around developing countries or developing systems that can buy. The focus would be just how cheap it is, right? So you can take that battery, you can put it in a different environment where it doesn't matter that it's degraded 50%. Another thing that's super exciting is all of the recycling that's going on. So we partner with Redwood Recycling. They do all of the recycling around Tesla batteries as well, and we have a program where we can take our batteries. We will actually buy back batteries from our customers. Not for, it's the similar concept as taking your car battery back to Costco, right, and getting that 10% credit. But same thing, we'll buy it back from you just so that we can get it and we send it to Redwood and suddenly you can recycle it.
Cool.
What's the size of them? Like, it's hard to imagine without seeing one.
It's super
small,
yeah. It's Lego blocks, right?
Yeah.
So there's a Lego block that is a footprint of a legal pad, and it's this tall. That's our smallest Lego block. And then we go from there. And then so the biggest building block that we have is about this size, and it's about this tall, and it's about 120 pounds. And then you just kind of stack and build depending on what you want to do. And this is really great. Like take a music festival. You have site lighting, first aid and safety, main stage, ticketing, catering. All of these are very different power needs and also time of use needs. And if you were to show up with a static battery system and say, yeah, I have my battery. Oh, it's too big here, it's too small here, right? So now you can go there and you have a truckload of batteries and they all stack and dynamically size so that right there in real time you have the same person that's moving the fencing also then just stacks the battery.
Do you just plug in the components in wherever you want to? Just like you would imagine in when one component or one layer of the stackable system runs out of juice, then it defaults to the next one down?
Yeah, so you can hot swap, right? So you can, the standard profiles that they all would discharge equally, but at the same time you could add other batteries. And so another part of this is having the technologies to, as that person puts one that's fully empty and connects it with one that's fully charged, that would typically result in a safety incident, a fire, that would be very unsafe. And so having the technology in these battery management systems, recognizing what the state of charge is on the other system, and then, okay, we're gonna wait, right? We're gonna self-regulate so that your experience is just great. I went into this event, I don't know, I don't care about batteries, it just works, right? Like that's the key.
You have a question?
Have you guys done any research on like nuclear powered batteries?
No, no.
What kind of powered battery?
Nuclear powered batteries?
Nuclear. Oh, I thought you were gonna do, electric eels.
There's a couple companies that are looking into using the contained radiation powering a photo cell to power different things.
Sounds good.
Oh,
Interesting.
or moss.
No, these are like real things. They've been powering satellites for decades. That's right. Nuclear batteries actually do this.
Yeah.
Do the job.
Anyways, so we do have time for like probably one more question. These guys are coming up next here at noon, so any more questions in the audience here? Alex?
I guess my question is more about like competition or how competition is evolved. It kind of sounds like you did a bunch of R&D and had a long lead time where you are growing. Has, I guess, what does competitive landscape look like, or have there been any challenges, or how does that work for you?
So there's 3D printing is really, really small, right? The entire industry is like $20 billion. And most of those people are making machines. So there really isn't substantial competition right now, which isn't a good thing. Because the fewer of us who are doing this, the fewer of us are out there trying to promote it. If we're the one guy out in the ocean saying, yeah, it doesn't work very well. So you never want to be alone. But in that, so we welcome a lot more competition, a lot more people working on this. It is evolving, but most of the print farms that are coming up are creating specific products rather than kind of general use services who can print anything. Quite frankly, it's way harder. No, the competitive landscape right now, I would say, is very thin. But it's changing quickly as COVID itself probably pushed us all ahead, the industry ahead, somewhere between 3 and 5 years with reshoring and just looking for other options.
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons from the first R2EV modular battery system was, really be customer facing constantly. Just talk to customers, pull them, see what's going on, see what are their pain points and how you can solve that, right? You always have to be talking to customers. And in that evolution for us, batteries are incredibly competitive, right? There's a ton of people that understand that this is the future, and there's a lot of capital being poured into this. And then so, good and bad, right? So you talk about being fixed and disciplined. The flip side of that, and now I'm going to go the other route, is that Joule Case has been able to adjust and quickly pivot, right? COVID shut down our whole customer, and we were able to then go a different way. And then, as I've seen the competition for these retail consumer batteries is fully saturated. We're not going to win there over and over and over. As we look at these larger systems where that power is so critical that, it's core to their business and they need to have it happen, where price is less of a sensitive matter and you don't have other people looking at it, we can now see that our technology platform is ideally solving for that, and there's not a lot of competition over there. So we kind of found a space that we can win, and really at that point the incumbent is the competition. Just like Gabe, right? He's saying, all I'm doing is going head to head with traditional manufacturing. All Joule Case is doing is going head to head with diesel generators, and so you just have to do that. And I'm glad that we're doing that, because if we were competing against the Tesla Powerwall or the EcoFlow that have hundreds of millions of dollars.
We are right at noon, so I think that's all for this session. You guys have more questions for you guys? Are you guys stick around in the lobby at all? Or
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.